Are we back? Are we back in a situation where Gaelic football is the glorious uncertainty and chaos of almost any of the top tier teams believing they can win in All Ireland? Or is there a new world order being slowly and quietly asserted in the form of Kerry? Anthony Moyles is with us this morning. Anthony, good morning to you.
Morning, lads. How you doing?
Yeah, pretty good. This is, I think, maybe one of the few times in our lives where we're both celebrating a victory, a victory Monday.
Yeah. How's it feel, Joe?
Pretty amazing, to be honest. I mean, like,
are you able to glow just like Owen does, or are you gloating, or is it just kind of like quietly confident, or
no gloating?
Yeah.
No,
no gloating.
History teaches you don't get too long to gloat. If this was a win in the summer against the Dubs, then there'd be a little bit of gloating going on for sure. But you don't want to wake them up just in time for them to go, oh, sorry, yeah, okay. You're good again. We better pay attention to you. It's like, it could go either way here. It definitely feels like I don't think the Dubs race is run at all. I think the prognostications are a bit mad. It's still a league game. It's still February. They still have some good players to come back, and they still will have a pattern of play. It's interesting that some players are coming back and starting to play good football again for them in patches and matches. And I'm not saying that's enough, but I ain't writing them off just yet.
But it feels good, though.
Yes.
It feels like and you could see it. You could see it with Glenn Ryan and obviously the crowd. But you could see how much it meant to the players and to the management team. Like, it feels good, and they obviously had. I'd say Kildare had put a sense of, right, we want a performance against this, and Ryan spoke about that. But very much, I'd say they said, listen, we're bringing them to Newbridge. We haven't had them here in a long, long time, I'd say they put it on the fixture list and said, this is the one we're really going to try to lay down a marker on. Again, it brings up that whole debate about these bringing teams and bringing Dublin out of Croke Park and the difference it makes. Is it 3-4 points to the home team? It probably is, because that was an unbelievable atmosphere. And Newbridge, as you well know, Newbridge is tight. Especially when you even get away from the stand and you're over the far side. If you're playing that far side as a wing back or a wing forward, you feel the crowd right on top of you. They're right next door to you, and they don't mind letting their feelings not be known, of course. So it's look, it was a great win for them, and you can see the momentum building with Kildare. You could see it last week. I thought they were very unlucky, actually. And you can see it. They've been in the battle every single match. They have been in the battle. Their commitment is immense. They're throwing themselves on balls. There was a couple of incidents yesterday where there was 50-50 challenges, balls on the ground, where Dublin players, one or two of them, decided, I'm just going to hold back a little bit here. Didn't show up well at all. And Kildare fellas threw their bodies on the ground, won the ball and won vital turnover. So, they'll be really, really enthusiastic after it. And they're building very, very well.
If you're Desi, are you worried about the fact that the ball is literally inches from going into the back of the net on multiple occasions, and for whatever reason it doesn't make that final bit of the journey? Or are you thinking, that's okay, we're creating loads of goal chances, maybe when Con comes back, maybe when some of the rest of those inside forwards get a little bit sharper, they end up as goals?
I think we spoke about this a couple of weeks ago, and I've seen people... I'm a little bit. I'm like you. I think that this, kind of writing them off is way too early. We've been speaking about it, and as I've been saying, they're getting elements of their game sorted, and every week they seem to be just adding an extra bit. And as you say, with players to come back of the caliber that the players who are going to come back, just by them being on the pitch and being able to do what they're able to do, all of a sudden it increases their chances once again. I feel that there's some players, and it's unfortunate, when you get a chance, say, there's a couple of players, I won't name them, but a couple of the forwards who've gone in, who have had chances now, they just haven't grabbed it. They haven't grabbed it by the scruff of the neck. They haven't taken shots on. They've been dishing passes off to the likes of Kilkenny, dishing passes off to Scully, or dishing, Dean Rock, or wherever, instead of actually going and taking the chances themselves. And I felt that some of those goal opportunities, not only yesterday, but in previous games, there was a thing of, I have to get it to a certain person, rather than actually, do you know what, I'm going to take the bull by the horns here and I'm going to have a go. And that's what you have to do to break into a team. And that's what you have to do to make sure that you're obviously on a starting 15 coming championship. I would have thought that it was a really good time for some of those younger Dublin lads, or even some lads like Pascal, who've been there for the last number of years, to really set a marker. But there just seems to be a little bit of tentativeness. And if I was Desi, you're probably saying, listen, we're creating them. We seem to have our defence in a decent order. I thought their defence was much better yesterday. They seem to know what they're doing a bit more. There seems to be a bit more structure. And essentially it's the fact that they just can't put the ball in the net and over the bar at the efficient rate that they're used to, Ger, which I think is probably something that they're going to really work on over the next kind of month or 2 months.
All right.
That's like a pretty identifiable thing, right? And that's like not an easy thing to fix, but it's going to be close enough to, I think, that takes Dublin to a level where they're not losing these games and all of a sudden are one of the top 4 or 5 teams in the country again, or is that overstating how dramatic that improvement would be?
Look, there's no doubt about it, Owen. They've come back into the pack, okay? There's no doubt about it. And the pack have been continuing their progression forward. And yes, they've come back. I actually don't think it's going to be a football thing at all. I think they will get the players back, and I think they will start to score. I think it's actually a mental thing. I think when I look across some of the results yesterday, and it's something I've been observing over the last while, the narratives around teams and the narratives that are being put out there in many sports and in many walks of life, it's quite amazing how a narrative can develop around a team. And then it's quite amazing how a narrative can actually be taken away from a team. So, if you look at Dublin, Desi was, I think they missed a trick in the sense of, he should have said this year, we're completely rebuilding. And don't have no expectations of us. This is not a team that will go out and win All Irelands. We're starting right back. That team, that golden generation is now gone. Yes, we have some remnants of it, but essentially this is a new team. And I think if he had set that out early, people would have probably said, well, listen, they are building. We're going to give them the opportunity to do that. But instead, there was this kind of halfway house where people were still expecting, and people were nearly kind of happy enough to see the fact that they were actually falling on their own sword and not winning games and da-da-da. So it's I think the narrative is something that even within the dressing room, and I don't know what goes on within the dressing room, but it's his motivational ability, and it's his ability to get those guys to a point where they actually have got it in the stomach to go and push again next year, or this year, should I say, and go and push again for another Sam Maguire. And those things are very, very, they're hard to gauge, but they're slight little things that happen in matches. As I said, 50-50 balls that you don't go for, decision making, certain things, just the ability to really turn and chase a guy back that you would have done last year or the year before, which you think it's a lost cause, and next thing you end up getting a block on a guy or something like that, and it's a pivotal moment. They're the small little things that you might miss even in watching a game, but they're the things that actually will make or break a team. And Kildare and the other guys have it now when they're coming up against Dublin. And for me, that's the biggest factor that I think he has to get right.
To talk a little bit more about Kildare, the other thing that was noticeable was the conditioning was allowing them to go into collisions. Now, there were still some blind alleys of possession, and listening to Paddy Andrews talk about the club final a couple of weeks ago, where players who aren't, or the system isn't evolved enough, you take an extra pass, you get swallowed up by a defence. Kildare still got caught in possession a few times, particularly in the last 10 minutes of the game when the sphincters were tightening on everybody who was watching it. But their conditioning is at a level now where they're actually able to compete against the strongest Dublin players and not come off significantly worse. Whereas in recent seasons, it felt like Dublin physically were able to dominate teams. They were faster than them. They were stronger than them. They don't seem to have that advantage at the moment.
Yeah, they don't. But again, you have to look at the players that are missing, Ger. You throw some of the guys that they haven't got into that pack, who are big physical fellas, and fellas who are able to blow through tackles. I think a number of years ago, looking at the Meath situation and the Leinster football situation, I remember just thinking to ourselves, the first thing that has to happen is, it's kind of like an athletics race. You have a guy who's able to run whatever it is in the 100 meters. Well, the first thing you have to do is, if the rest of the pack are chasing them, they have to get to the physical capabilities that they're able to compete, first of all. So they're not breaking down, that they're strong enough, that they're able to do all the things. So when you put one person up against the other person, there is no deficiency in that player or that athlete and this athlete. That's the first thing that has to happen. Then you have to work on, obviously, the skills, and you hope that the skills are improving up to a point where there's no skill deficiency. And then it comes down to, again, the narrative around the team, the motivation, what's happening, who really wants it, who doesn't want it, the psychological aspect of the game. And I think the physical and the skill elements of teams around Dublin and in that chasing pack have now caught up with Dublin. So we spoke a couple of weeks ago about Kerry, and I was mentioning, Clifford and O'Shea. These lads are big men now. They're not boys anymore. They're not like 18, 19-year-olds that the Dublin lads were able to just feck out of the way and throw them out of the way and away with them. These lads are big boys now. They dictate the pace. They dictate what's going to happen. And they nearly dictate the terms of engagement with regard to the football. So not only are you meeting fellas who can play ball and can play it at an unbelievably high level, but you're also meeting fellas who can mix it with you physically. So all of those things have coincided, I suppose, with a situation where, Desi Farrell and his management team are kind of saying, have we got the fellas who can go to the well again? Because it's not the younger guys. It probably should be the younger guys, but unfortunately, it doesn't work out that way. The younger guys are not going to be the guys who really lead. They're going to be the fellas who chip in, and the likes of Gannon, for example, is a great leader. You can see it already, that he's the guy who's taking it on. But some of the other fellas won't. So he needs those fellas like the Howards, like Scullys, like these guys who are still young but who've been around and have a number of All-Irelands in their back pocket. They're the fellas that need to dig deep and who need to say, you know what, we're taking this on. We're not going to let this narrative build about us. We're not going to allow this to happen. We're going to come and we're going to actually take this championship by storm. Have they got the capabilities to do it? Yes. Have they got the players to do it? I think they do. But do they have the mental strength to do it? That's the question.
What about Kerry then? Owen was in Iskeen to watch the end of the goalkeeping. We talked a little bit about this at the start, but legitimately, Beggan got caught twice.
It's not it's a question about whether it's not about the end of the fly goalkeepers at all. Because I know that there was obviously a pretty positive display of it in the Kildare game, from what I understand yesterday. I didn't see it, but
it's still a few instances where you're like, ooh.
So I guess, Anthony, the discussion is about the risk versus reward thing. For me yesterday, and this is just an isolation of yesterday, where Beggan perhaps either was down to him or down to his teammates, his forays out of goal just weren't beneficial enough to the Monaghan attack. There wasn't enough pace coming off the shoulder. It was basically having 15 men passing relatively laterally without much penetration, rather than having an added man really trying to burst through that defence. So for me, when you leave that risk open at the back, the reward actually just isn't worth it. Whereas what we had in the first game of the league, you'd Beggan actually scoring from play, so that probably is worth it. So what's the balance at the moment in your view, or can you throw a blanket over this at all? Is it dependent entirely on the team you're up against, the goalkeeper at your disposal, and a multitude of other factors?
It's probably a multitude of factors, Owen, but I think there should be some hard and fast rules with it. I think on the kick-out situation, it should be a hard and fast rule of whether you're playing with, the opposition keeper is kicking with the breeze or against the breeze. You want to squeeze up. And I think there's some teams they're just doing it all the time, and they're putting the keeper out there to be a visual impairment. So when the opposition goalkeeper looks up, he sees the other goalkeeper and he says, well, I'm not kicking into that space. And I think there is a little bit of, as you say, just having the keeper out there, just to have him out there, and he's not really doing anything. You could nearly have the umpire out. All he's doing is getting the ball and just shifting it on. As you say, there's no pace to it. There's no real incision. There's no really added incentive to it at all, I find. Where it does work is when you have a keeper, and Began, to be fair to him, is generally very, very cool and very calm on the ball and very adept at running with the ball. But when you have a guy who is able to take the ball at pace and bring it that 20 or 30 metres, or indeed be able to pick a pass, over maybe a kind of a blanket defence, that's where I think it really, really comes into play. It also comes into play, obviously, when you want to get out of trouble in your own defence and you have a person who has the ability just to move and shift the ball. I think some teams are getting a little bit caught. They're getting caught between two stools, as I said, of just playing it and just having a guy there all the time out. If I was the opposition to that and I identified a team that we were coming up against that was doing that with their goalkeeper, I would definitely be setting some traps for the goalkeeper. Allow the goalkeeper the ball and actually let him come in and let him maybe come down the centre of the pitch a bit more, and then look to trap him, look to dispossess him, and then look to obviously try and get the ball back into the back of the net as they all chase back. I think we've seen it, and we're going to see it again more and more, because at the end of the day, a lot of goalkeepers, although they're improving, a lot of keepers aren't all that comfortable with having the ball in the hand, especially when you've a couple of players coming running at them and trying to dispossess them. So I think there is it's a 50-50 thing at the moment. I think the more important thing really for goalkeepers, of course, is the restarts, and it's always been the restarts. The power of that and the ability to get your own kickouts away is still a massive thing. And when we go back to Dublin, the Cluxton factor and everything else of that, and the restarts and the speed of restarts is still something that I think that they're slightly missing. They're improving on it, but it is still a big factor for
them. Kerry are very good. Owen is bearing the lead here. Kerry are very, very good at the moment. Looking efficient, have found a defensive style, have solved a lot of the problems. Like, are we missing this?
No, I don't think so. I think they're really good, Ger. I tell you what they've brought. They've brought an unbelievable aggression now in their defence. We spoke about it last week about this idea of running to the ball. I thought last year they were in this weird zonal thing where they had players back, and I see teams doing it now, and it really, irks me. Fellas are back there. There's bodies there, but actually no one is actually picking up men. You see the Tyrone goal, McBurty's goal against Tyrone. If you count the amount of Tyrone players that were in vicinity of around McBurty when he made that run, I think there was 7 or 8 Tyrone guys, and there was 2 or 3 Donegal guys. I think there actually could have been 8 Tyrone guys. Like, 8 defenders should never be done by 3 forwards. That should never happen. Someone's not doing their job there. And what's happening is, when you're in that situation, the responsibility is passed from one to another without even maybe communication. And of course, all it needs is a slight breakdown and a fella with a bit of skill, and in he goes. And that was happening last year with Kerry. There was fellas passing guys on. The other guy wasn't aware that he actually was the recipient of the player. Next thing, he was watching the ball. 2 guys in behind, bang, goal or score. Whereas this year they are really set. They're man to man. They're very aggressive. They have the +1. They have someone else back in there. Morley, I think, has been a bit of a revelation where he's playing. They have an awful lot of pace coming from the half-back line. I'm not a massive fan of O'Bugler from a defensive point of view. Like, if you look at him against Dublin, Bugler gave him all sorts of problems. But from an attacking point of view, he is unbelievably quick. And when you think of White and you think of all the rest of the guys that are still due to come back into that team, they're firm favourites for me at the moment. Firm favourites, and we could be looking at a situation like we had in Dublin for the last 10 years. Because these guys are young, they're hungry, and when you want to go back to narratives, look at the narrative of that team. They're sitting there and they're saying, right, it's now our time. It's our time to stamp. We've had enough of this, the blue wave, the drive for 5, all this kind of crack, whatever it is, blah, 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 6, 7, many All-Irelands. They're now saying, right, it's time now for us to write history. And I tell you wouldn't bet against them.
It's hard to disagree with that, and I think they're narrowing in as All-Ireland favourites over the last couple of weeks as well. I'm not sure if there is a situation that yourself, Anthony, from experience, where the longer a season goes on, the more that expectation just develops inside, and the mentality and what a manager can do to try and, I guess, remedy that a little bit. Is it chopping and changing with the squad a little bit more than you actually need to from week to week, just to keep things fresh in the squad? Because there is no getting away from the fact now that they are firm favourites, and it's getting firmer, to be honest. Like, because you've got, like, Dublin, I think, were second favourites before the weekend, so I presume that they've moved out a little bit again, so that only just strengthens Kerry's cause again. So how do you, I guess, actively fight against the mental challenges that going for their first All-Ireland for many of them is going to pose?
Well, you're the Kerry man, Owen. So, like, I don't think expectation is never been an issue with Kerry people. Like, there's an expectation whether you had great teams or pretty mediocre teams. So I think when you go into and you put on that Kerry jersey, whether you're playing under 12, 14, or all the way up through the senior, there is an expectation that you are going to wear it and you are going to beat the opposition, no matter who they are. So I don't think they're going to suffer from, to be like startled bunnies. They're going to realise that actually now is their time. I think they will take that mantle on. And I think they will take it on with gusto. I think they will look at every single team that they come up against, and I think they will feel that they're going to be ruthless. I can see that in them. There is a bit of a ruthless streak in them. As I said, they can mix it either way with you. And when they have the opportunities to even go for points, they're saying, right, let's go for goals here. They are literally bringing every opportunity to its last phase. And that is a sign of a team that is massively hungry and that is playing with their head up and is playing with massive confidence and is playing with ruthlessness. And, I don't think O'Connor will have a problem, honestly, with from a psychological point of view. Yeah, if they get a couple of injuries, if Clifford got injured or O'Shea got injured, but I think honestly that the strength and depth is so strong now that they're able to bring guys in and just replace fellas. So, I know we're building them up here, but I really honestly I can't see many other people having the firepower that they have. The question mark I always had was the defence. That was my question mark. I thought they could score plenty up front, but it was leaking at the other end, and I think they've solved that, are on the way to solving it in a big way.
Kerry are 11-8, Dublin 3-1, still second favourites.
Second, right?
Yeah, by a mile as well. Mayo are 6-1, Tyrone are 9-1, Donegal 14.
I'm being genuine when I say this. Mayo 6-1 is value, right? Like, I mean, you have to say that it's hard to make a case that they're a bigger price than Dublin at the moment, Anthony.
I may have said that's serious. I'd agree. That's serious value. Like, I don't want to harp on about this, but again, you look at Mayo, right? You look at what they did over the weekend, and you look, like, people kind of go, oh, how do they keep coming back? Well, why wouldn't they keep coming back? They want that ultimate prize. The question for Mayo would be, when they eventually get their hands on that prize, what they will do the following year or the year after that, because that their narrative is driving and continuously getting up off the floor and going for that. So those guys don't know when they're beaten. It is literally drilled into their heads. It's in every being that they are, that they feel that they need to get to the promised land. So every single time they do a training session, every single time they do a video session, analysis session, every time they play a game, they're thinking, we need to get to that promised land. They're constantly motivated to push towards that. Now, I'm not saying other teams aren't, but you'll find if players were really, really honest, other teams would be, well, we're in a rebuild phase, we're in this, we're in that. Whereas Mayo constantly, every single time they start out, that's where they want to go. And like, you look at them, you look at what they're doing, you look at their strength and depth. Like, they're bringing guys off the bench. I think they brought, whatever, it was Durkin, O'Hora, Kevin McLaughlin, and Aidan O'Shea, and like that's four serious. That's firepower coming in off the sideline, and that's guys who can change a game, and who can do things for you, and the strength and depth once again. These guys have to accept this role. Like, Aidan O'Shea is a big character in that Mayo dressing room, and he has to accept the role that he's coming on. He has to accept the role that he's coming on and going to change things. And again, that's something that Horan has done very, very well. he's managed to operate that whole idea of that we have fellas coming in who are going to enhance the team. We're going to finish with a stronger team than we started. That whole idea. But again, that's all about him building kind of messages around the team. And look, they're going to be thereabouts. They're not going to go away. Not a chance.
One last question for you. The situation in Meath is getting a bit desperate at this point. It's tricky that the remaining fixtures they have. There's some winnable games. They're playing the best team in the division still to go. So there's a possibility that they're staring down the barrel of the Tailteann Cup in advance of the Leinster Championship.
Yeah, it's not good, Ger. It's not good. We've been. Thanks for bringing this on me on a Monday morning as we sign off. No, I'm not. Look, I think I wasn't at the game. Okay, so I can't really talk about too much about the game against Offaly on Saturday. They got out of jail with a last-minute goal. But I looked at some of the stats on it. Again, their efficiency rate in front of goal is really low. I think it was 30% of shots from play were scores. And then 37 or 38% overall. That's bad, and it's been at that level. I think they've only scored 45 points. I think they're one of the lowest scoring teams across the 4 divisions. So they have problems. They have a lot of injuries. They got Ronan Jones back. They were essentially without their 2 starting midfielders, which was Jones and Menton. They got Jones back. He's helped things. Menton will come back. But again, there's time. It is a massive time for a few of those new guys who've been in the last number of years. They need to step up and they need to start scoring. They're probably trying now in the last few games, and I would say over the next few games, to bring a bit more of that youth in that was kind of in the minors and the under-20 squads over the last couple of years. So you will start to see them being kind of filtered in. But there's no doubt about it. Andy, you guys know, you covered it when the county board had a bit of an upheaval against them, and they had to go back to the clubs. I've spoken about this before. That's never an easy situation then for a management team to have that sitting over them, whether you're winning or losing. And of course, what only happens is the pressure gets applied even more when you start to lose a few games or draw a few games, or you're in the situation that you're in. There's only one thing that can happen there. The players have to dig in, the management team have to dig in, and the county has to dig in, and they have to get behind Andy, and they have to get behind this squad, and they have to try and push, because on their day they're a very, very good team. They're very fast, they're very quick. They can open you up. But I noticed something against Offaly, again, passive defending, guys in zones, not really. If you look at the McNamee goal, he gives the pass, he runs past 3 Meath players, runs through them to get on the end of it. As soon as he gives that pass, he should be bang. He should be hit for when he wants to go for the return. He should not be allowed to go anywhere near it in towards the goal. And of course, what happens is he gives the pass, ends up getting it back, sticks it in the back of the net at a vital time in the game. Now they kept going and they peppered the goal, and they were probably unfortunate that it ended up as a last minute, but they got their just rewards. But I think it is pressure for him, Ger, and I think there's a couple of games. Obviously, they have to play Cork, which is going to be a big one. But I wouldn't be surprised if they took a bigger scalp. I really wouldn't. I wouldn't be surprised if they took a bigger scalp, in the run in. But they need a big scalp to get confidence within the squad. Yeah,
well, nothing like a last minute goal to get out of jail to actually make training a bit happier this week. So we'll see. Anthony, good stuff. Thanks a million. Cheers.
No bother, lads. Talk to you.
Meath have Derry, Clare and Cork left in their 3 games, and there's a bit of jeopardy around those. So, look, a league-based championship
would have been good
in making everybody interested in the last round. These are dead rubbers. No, we're not supposed to have any interest left in these games now because they're dead rubbers. Yeah. Means nothing.
There's an alternate reality where we're having a great time right now.
I'm having a good time. There's definitely
of course. How could you not be?
There's definitely an alternate reality where maybe the world is not going to hell.